Welcome to Plastics in Practice. We spend a ton of time talking about how to successfully pull off a major upper extremity replant. But what happens after the patient leaves the OR? Today, we're digging into a fantastic paper that gives us a real, practical guide for what comes next, for all that secondary reconstruction.
So, let's kick things off with a number that should make us all feel pretty good. 89%. That's the replant survival rate for these massive injuries, according to the study. That's just a huge testament to modern microsurgery and everything we do in that initial critical phase.
And this is the big question, right? This is what really matters to the patient. We've saved the limb, but have we saved the function? As we all know, a perfused hand isn't the same as a useful hand. The journey is really just getting started.
And this number 3 really gets to the heart of what the authors call the post-replant paradox. Despite that awesome survival rate, the average patient in this study needed 3 additional surgeries to get meaningful function back. So getting that limb to live is just the ticket to the game. It's not the win itself.
So what are those surgeries? Well, the study found 4 main workhorses. Tenolysis and soft tissue coverage were neck and neck at the top, followed pretty closely by free-functioning muscle transfers and then your standard tendon transfers. But here is the real kicker, the absolute pearl from this paper. It's not random which one you're going to need. It's actually predictable based on the level of the injury.
Okay, so let's break this down zone by zone, starting distally. We're talking about replants at the wrist and the distal forearm. Here, the fight is all about mechanics.
Down in this zone, you're actually in a pretty good spot in some ways. You've got less ischemic muscle to worry about, and the nerves don't have as far to travel. But that very environment, with all those tendons packed so tightly together, it's a perfect storm for adhesions and scar. So, your number one enemy here isn't nerve failure, it's just plain stiffness.
So it should be no surprise then that for this level, your go-to secondary procedure, the one you should be thinking about from day one, is tendonolysis. You've got to get in there, free up those tendons, and restore that critical glide.
And this slide right here, this is pure gold for your boards and for your everyday practice. It lays out the timeline perfectly. You wait about a year, let the nerves do their thing, see what you get back. Then around 18 to 21 months, that's your window for the motion procedures like tendonolysis. And way down the line, if you're still struggling with an unstable joint, that's when you start thinking about an arthrodesis as a salvage option. It's a staged, logical approach.
All right, let's move up the arm to that mid-level zone. Now we're talking about replants at the elbow and proximal forearm. And trust me, the game completely changes here.
And this is the key concept to grasp. Distally, our problem was mechanical. The tendons were stuck. But as you move proximally with that big muscle belly, the problem becomes neuromuscular. The nerve simply doesn't reinnervate the muscle well enough over that distance. The engine isn't just stuck anymore, the engine is dead. It's a totally different pathology.
And because that engine is dead, a simple tenolysis isn't going to cut it. It won't do a thing. You need a new engine. And that's where the free-functioning muscle transfer comes in. This becomes the absolute workhorse for this level of injury. You're bringing in a new, healthy, powered motor unit.
Okay, so here are your high-yield clinical pearls for this zone. First, if your patient hasn't hit at least M3, or anti-gravity strength, by the 1-year mark, you need to be planning for an FFMT. Don't wait around. Second, and this is huge, during the initial replant, you've got to be thinking ahead. Debride all the bad tissue for sure, but you have to preserve a good proximal nerve stump because you're going to need that for your transfer later. And third, don't be shy about shortening the bone. Taking out 6, even 8 centimeters is totally acceptable and can make your primary repairs so much cleaner.
And finally, we move all the way up to the most proximal and highest energy injuries, the upper arm replants. Here, our reconstructive priorities shift again, right back to the absolute fundamentals.
Yeah, with these replants, you are dealing with a total war zone of tissue damage. You're managing massive soft tissue defects, a huge risk of infection, and bone that just does not want to heal. So before you can even dream about restoring function, you have to solve 2 fundamental problems: getting good soft tissue coverage and achieving bone stability.
And the authors give us a really powerful, direct piece of advice here. You need a flap. A simple skin graft might seem like an easy out, but it's a trap. That graft is going to contract down and basically strangle any potential for muscle excursion underneath, killing any hope of functional recovery.
So in these really complex cases, you got to think about how to kill 2 birds with 1 stone.
An early pedicled latissimus transfer can be a total game changer. It restores critical elbow flexion, which you absolutely need for the hand to be useful, and at the same time, it provides that robust vascularized coverage that the limb is desperately crying out for.
Okay, so we've walked through all the zones, from distal to proximal. Let's pull this all together into a simple, predictive algorithm that you can literally use the next time one of these devastating injuries comes through your door.
And this really is the main takeaway. The need for secondary surgery isn't a surprise, it's an expectation. And you can predict what you'll need. For distal injuries, you anticipate tenalysis. For mid-level injuries, you anticipate a free-functioning muscle transfer. And for those big proximal injuries, your first priority is getting good flap coverage early on. It's a roadmap you can use to counsel patients from day one.
Ultimately, this framework just changes the whole conversation. It lets us move beyond just limb survival and toward a planned, staged, predictable restoration of function. And that, at the end of the day, is the ultimate goal for our patients. This paper gives us the roadmap to get there.